The evening rush at Veloire. The evening rush at Veloire, one of New York's most exclusive restaurants, was reaching its peak. The atmosphere was a symphony of sophistication. The chime of crystal glasses, the gentle murmur of wealthy patrons, and the faint strains of classical piano music playing in the background. Beneath the glow of golden chandeliers, servers weaved through the maze of tables, their movements seamless and practiced. It was the kind of setting where even chaos appeared choreographed. Among the servers was Lena, a poised young woman in her mid-20s. Her jet-black hair was pinned neatly back, and her every movement exuded a quiet grace. But beneath her polished exterior, fatigue clung to her like a shadow. Tonight was her second shift of the day, and her legs ached from the relentless hours. Yet her expression betrayed none of it. Her smile was warm, professional, and unwavering. Her family depended on her, and she carried that responsibility like armor. As she deftly navigated between tables, a whispered nudge from a coworker caught her attention. "Table 9 needs more wine," the server muttered, a hint of dread in their tone. Lena's heart sank. Table 9 meant Victor Langston, a name that could send a ripple of unease through the entire staff. Lena took a steadying breath, adjusted the bottle of Chateau Lafite on her tray, and approached the table. The man at the center of the group leaned back in his chair, exuding a lazy confidence. His gaze swept over her, not with acknowledgement, but with the detached entitlement of someone used to being served. Victor Langston, a self-made investment mogul, was infamous for his arrogance, and Lena braced herself for what was to come. Victor Langston's offer. Victor Langston's presence was magnetic, but not in a way that inspired admiration. It was the kind of charisma that made people uncomfortable, as though they were standing too close to a fire. He was known for his wealth, his power, and his penchant for nitpicking every minor detail. Servers at Veloire had countless stories of him sending back perfectly cooked dishes, or complaining about room temperature wine that was, in fact, served at the exact right temperature. As Lena approached, Victor's lips curled into a smirk. "Ah, there you are. I was beginning to think I'd have to pour it myself." His tone was laced with mockery, loud enough to draw the attention of his dinner companions. Lena kept her composure, pouring the wine with practiced precision, even as his gaze bore into her. The other guests avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable with his demeanor, but unwilling to intervene. As she finished pouring, Victor's smirk deepened. "You're wasted here," he remarked, swirling the wine in his glass. "I'm hosting a gala next week. Very exclusive, high-profile guests. I could use someone with your attention to detail." His words were unexpected, and Lena's hand paused momentarily. Then he named the figure he was willing to pay her for one night, triple her nightly earnings. Her breath hitched. That kind of money could cover her mother's medical bills for months. It was an offer she couldn't afford to refuse, even if it came from someone like Victor Langston. "I'd be honored," she replied softly, sealing a decision that would change her life. The gala and the grand piano. The night of the gala, Lena arrived at Victor Langston's penthouse, and her breath caught at the sight of the building. Towering above the city, the glass and steel structure seemed almost otherworldly. Inside, the decor was a display of unimaginable wealth. Gold chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, the walls were adorned with priceless artwork, and velvet carpets muffled the sound of her footsteps. Every detail was immaculate, every corner exuding opulence. The gala was already in full swing. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits milled about, sipping champagne and exchanging small talk. Lena was assigned to the VIP section, the heart of the event, where the most influential guests congregated. The pressure was immense, but she moved through the room with practiced ease, serving drinks and hors d'oeuvres without missing a beat. As she carried a tray past the center of the room, her eyes landed on something that stopped her in her tracks. A grand piano, gleaming under the soft glow of the chandeliers, stood proudly in the center of the room. It wasn't just any piano, it was a Steinway Model D. The sight of it sent a jolt through her chest, memories flooding back unbidden. This was the same model she had played during her final competition, the last time she had allowed herself to dream. Lena's fingers twitched at her side, the old, familiar urge to play stirring within her. She had pushed music out of her life for so long, burying it beneath the weight of responsibility. But now, standing so close to the instrument, it felt as though a part of her that had been dormant was coming back to life. She didn't notice Victor watching her from across the room, his sharp eyes catching the moment of hesitation. Victor's cruel challenge. Victor's voice rang out, cutting through the hum of conversation like a blade. You keep staring at that thing like it's an old lover. Think you can actually play? His tone was mocking, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Heads turned, and an uncomfortable silence settled over the group as they waited to see how Lena would respond. Her cheeks flushed, and her stomach twisted into knots. She wanted to shrink away, to disappear into the crowd. But Victor wasn't giving her an out. Go on, he pressed, his smirk widening. Show us what you've got. The challenge was clear. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a trap. He expected her to fail, to embarrass herself in front of his esteemed guests. Lena's hands trembled as she approached the piano. The weight of a decade away from music pressed heavily on her, and doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. But as she sat down on the bench, the familiar scent of polished wood and ivory enveloped her, grounding her in the present. The noise of the gala faded into the background, replaced by the quiet hum of anticipation. She placed her hands on the keys, the cool ivory smooth beneath her fingertips. For a moment she hesitated, her mind racing with memories of the last time she had played. Then, with a deep breath, she let the first note ring out. It was hesitant, uncertain. But as the melody began to unfold, something within her shifted. Muscle memory took over, and the music began to flow. A performance that stunned the room. The first notes of the melody floated through the air, soft and tentative. It was a piece her father used to hum when life felt overwhelming, a song of comfort and resilience. As Lena played, the music swelled, filling the room with its haunting beauty. The conversations around her ceased, and all eyes turned toward the piano. The audience, expecting a clumsy attempt, was stunned into silence. The music was raw, emotional, and utterly captivating. Lena's fingers moved with a confidence that surprised even her, each note drawing her deeper into the moment. She wasn't just playing the piano, she was pouring her soul into it, letting the music speak for her in a way words never could. Among the crowd, a well-known orchestra conductor leaned forward, his expression one of astonishment. He recognized the depth of her talent, the kind of brilliance that couldn't be taught. Victor, meanwhile, stood frozen, his smirk long gone. For the first time, he looked at Lena not as a server, but as someone he couldn't quite understand. As the piece built toward its climax, Lena felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Each note carried the weight of her sacrifices, the dreams she had abandoned, and the love she still carried for the life she had left behind. By the time she played the final note, the room was utterly still, the silence heavy with awe. And then, the applause erupted. It wasn't polite or obligatory, it was genuine, thunderous, and full of emotion. People rose to their feet, some wiping away tears, others shaking their heads in disbelief. For a moment, Lena simply sat there, her hands resting lightly on the keys, overwhelmed by the response. A new beginning. As the applause began to fade, a man stepped forward from the crowd. He was older, with a dignified air, and Lena recognized him as a trustee of a prestigious music school. That was extraordinary, he said, his voice warm and sincere. Have you ever considered returning to music professionally? Lena hesitated, her mind racing. The life she had left behind felt so distant, so unattainable. But now, with the applause still ringing in her ears, the possibility didn't seem so far out of reach. Before she could respond, Victor spoke up, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. She's just a server, he muttered, but the words lacked their usual bite. The trustee ignored him, handing Lena his card. We have an upcoming recital. I would love for you to audition. You have something rare, something the world needs to hear. Lena took the card with trembling fingers, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine what could be. Victor, meanwhile, stood awkwardly at the edge of the group, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. His gaze lingered on Lena, but she didn't look back. The night had shifted something within him, but whether it was guilt, envy, or something else entirely, Lena didn't care. This moment wasn't about him. A year later, she would look back on this night as the beginning of a new chapter. The first step toward reclaiming the dreams she thought she had lost forever. And for Victor Langston, it would remain a night he could never quite forget. Full circle. 1 year later, Lena found herself standing backstage at a grand recital hall, her heart racing with anticipation. The room beyond the curtain was packed with an audience eager to hear her perform. The applause from earlier performances echoed faintly, but she focused on the moment that was hers. Everything had led to this. The gala, the challenges, the choice to believe in herself again. As she stepped onto the stage, she was greeted by a sea of faces. Among them, she spotted the trustee who had given her the card that changed everything. Near the back, half hidden in the shadows, sat Victor Langston. His presence caught her off guard for a moment, but she quickly refocused. He wasn't the reason she was here. This moment belonged to her. The Steinway Model D sat gleaming under the spotlight, its keys inviting her forward. She took a deep breath, placed her hands on the keys, and let the first notes flow. The music was hers, a composition she had written to honor the journey she had taken. It spoke of struggle, of sacrifice, and of rediscovery. Each note carried a piece of her story, and the audience was captivated. As she played, Lena felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She had come full circle, reclaiming the dream she thought she had lost forever. The applause that followed was thunderous, filling the hall with a warmth that she carried with her long after the final bow. Victor, watching from the shadows, rose to his feet as the crowd gave her a standing ovation. His expression was unreadable, but for the first time, Lena didn't care what he thought. She had reclaimed her narrative, and nothing could take that away from her. After the recital, as she greeted the guests who approached her with congratulations, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Her journey wasn't over, but she had taken the hardest step. And for the first time in a long time, the future felt bright, filled with possibilities she was ready to embrace.